Hey everyone, I'm Mariana. This is Impression Blend, and it's about time we talked about the best movies of 2025. It was a weird movie year. It wasn't my favorite. I was worried for a while because so many films seemed to be in that general it's fine category, and some of my most anticipated films ended up being disappointing, but it was definitely saved by those end of the year releases. We made a pretty epic comeback. As with any favorites, this is a very personal, subjective list of movies that I loved the most, movies that really spoke to me, that really stuck with me, that I cannot stop thinking about, and I can't wait to see your favorites in the comments below. Let's get into this. Let's start with number 10, which for me is Bring Her Back, one of the most disturbing and emotionally devastating films I have seen in a long time. Honestly, part of the reason why it's not higher on this list is because it's not very rewatchable, and rewatchability plays a big role in my lists. I just don't need to relive the dread this made me feel, but this is a fantastic horror film. Directed by the Philippo brothers and starring the amazing Sally Hawkins, Bring Her Back tells the story of a brother and sister who are sent to live with a foster mother after a family tragedy. Things immediately feel off at the new house, and the two siblings quickly begin to realize their foster mother has some very dark issues of her own. If you remember, I loved the Philippo brothers' previous film, Talk to Me, and as dark as that movie is, I still thought it was a lot of fun, at least from the horror fan perspective. But Bring Her Back really dialed everything up. The body horror, the psychological horror, the intensity. It's a brilliantly messed up movie. In my review, I said that it was easily the scariest movie of the year and that I didn't think I would see anything scarier in 2025. Well, I was right, because this traumatic horror, I have no other way of describing it, really lingered. It has some fantastic practical effects and sound design that really sell everything that's going on, making you wish you could unsee and unhear some of it. But what makes it get under your skin just as much is the story and the characters, and the performance by Sally Hawkins, who fills her character with so much darkness and desperation, but you also understand her, as unhinged as she is. It's a fantastic horror film and a powerful exploration of grief, loss, and loneliness. It can be a bit much, and I completely understand why some people found it overwhelming, but as far as genuine, unsettling, dark horror goes, I can't think of anything that rattled me more than Bring Her Back in 2025. Let's lighten things up a bit, because my next favorite is very rewatchable and a lot of fun. At number 9, I have Wake Up Dead Man, the third Knives Out mystery from Rian Johnson. I was really looking forward to this one, and I was getting a little nervous, but I am so glad it did not disappoint. With a very gothic setting and yet another amazing ensemble cast, Wake Up Dead Man is a locked room mystery with Benoit Blanc attempting to solve a seemingly impossible murder. A small town, a weirdly tightly knit community, an old church with some history, many twists and turns along the way, and Josh O'Connor as a young priest. What more could you ask for? First of all, I would like to take a moment to appreciate how different all three of Rian Johnson's murder mysteries are. Even though I'm glad that we got away from the over-the-top silliness of Glass Onion, I love that he keeps trying new things and finding new ways to approach the story, because it would be so easy to just keep doing the same formula over and over again. In Wake Up Dead Man, Johnson changes up the balance of the story, leaning further into personal history of these characters, exploring dynamics inside a community, but also taking a close look at religion and leadership. Religion as a topic can easily become a minefield to navigate, and yet in this movie, it's used to explore humanity and kindness without feeling, preachy. Johnson does not shy away from the darker side of things, focusing on how easy it is to manipulate people through fear and anger, to take advantage of someone vulnerable, and how easy it can be to lose sight of whether or not you're doing something for the right reasons. But he also delivers an ending that is arguably the most cathartic and hopeful of the franchise so far. It's undeniably the most layered and thematically interesting film out of the three, which I was not expecting. I expected plot twists and a solid mystery. That's why I watch these movies. But I did not expect to have a real emotional response to Wake Up Dead Man, and I love that a movie can do all that while also having a satisfying story and a great sense of humor and great lighting. The lighting in this film is stunning. I'd like 5 more of these, please. At least. Now, this next film is honestly an even tougher watch than Bring Her Back, because it's real. You guys know that I like to include at least one documentary in these yearly favorites lists, and there is no question in my mind this year, not only about how much this affected me, but also about how important this documentary is. At number 8, I have 2,000 Meters to Andriivka. Directed by Mstislav Chernov, the documentarian behind 20 Days in Mariupol, the film follows a group of soldiers in the middle of Ukraine's counteroffensive in 2023. The goal of this specific group is to get through a narrow strip of a forest and liberate the village of Andriivka from Russian occupation. This, as you can imagine, is a lot to watch. It's almost 2 hours of very real frontline warfare. It's not romanticized or glamorized. It's not portrayed as anything other than what it actually is: a merciless, brutal survival on scorched land. It's an honest look at what war is actually like, and it's about as close as you can get, or as close as you'd want to get, without actually being there. I don't think I can overstate how horrific this is. I do not believe we've had a first-hand, in-your-face account of war quite like this before, because the footage we see is mostly shot with cameras attached to the helmets of these brave soldiers. So that's horrific on its own. But what's just as haunting are the conversations we hear them have when they're not actively engaged, and the number of times we meet someone just to soon be told how many months they have left to live. It's what it means when one of them asks, "What if this war is until the end of our lives?" It's the fact that what they're liberating is land and rubble. There's nothing else left there, and yet it means everything. Look, it's a tough film to recommend because very few people would actively want to watch something like this, and yet 2,000 Meters to Andriivka is so important and absolutely required viewing that everyone should watch. Pretending like it doesn't exist because you closed your eyes and you didn't see it, unfortunately, doesn't make it any less real. But on top of that, this is simply fearless, groundbreaking, unforgettable filmmaking. All right, who is still here with me? At number 7, I have something completely different, yet again, and that is Train Dreams. If you know my taste, you know that I love a quietly powerful movie that is a meditation on life, on our imperfect existence, on what matters and how much we matter to each other. And Train Dreams is exactly that type of film. You pretty much just have to trust me on this one because I don't think the premise really sounds like a big selling point here. It's set in the beautiful Pacific Northwest in the beginning of the 20th century, and it's about a logger played by Joel Edgerton who experiences life and love as the world around him keeps changing. I know, I know, but hear me out. It's great and it's a stunning movie visually and emotionally. Is it a bit of a slow burn? Yes. Does it have voiceover narration? Also, yes, and I'm not someone who likes that in movies, but for some reason it really works here. But does it make you feel inspired and just a little bit better about life? Absolutely. This is for all of us Terrence Malick fans who really need him to release another masterpiece into the world already, because Train Dreams is pretty much the most Terrence Malick film in recent memory that's not made by Terrence Malick. It looks so beautiful, some of my favorite cinematography of the year, and it feels so alive, even in its moments of stillness. It's a very evocative film. Also, Joel Edgerton gives one of my favorite lead performances of the year here as Robert, proving once again that he is a very underrated and underappreciated actor. It's interesting because it feels like a very personal, quiet film, but through his character, we also experience this overwhelming time of change, of things coming and going, the world constantly moving ahead. If you need a film that will leave you contemplating the meaning of your existence without a sense of dread, Train Dreams is that film. It is deeply moving and so gorgeous, and I love what it has to say about our place in the world. At number 6, I have No Other Choice, the newest film from the legendary Park Chan-wook and the most snubbed movie this awards season. I just can't. What a unique treat this movie was. Nobody does it quite like him, and even though there is some thematic overlap between this and Parasite and maybe even Squid Game, it feels completely original and unforgettable. The story is about a paper mill manager who is living the perfect life with his family, loving it, until he suddenly loses his job. Now he gets to face the ruthless job market growing more and more violently desperate, and he is willing to do whatever it takes to get another job and maintain his lifestyle. This movie does not hold back. It has some very sharp satire, and the director clearly has some things to say about capitalism, the current state of things, and where he thinks we're heading. It is also a very funny movie. It's a black comedy, and it really knows how to walk that line, balancing between violence and finding something comedic in these circumstances. But aside from being very entertaining, it's a film that's filled with metaphors and very observant details. It's a film that challenges the audience to actually pay close attention, thankfully, to interpret the visual and narrative choices that are made here. Speaking of the visuals, this is easily my favorite film of the year from the visual perspective, between the vibrant colors, the cinematography, the match cuts, the dissolves, the double exposures. What a treat. The visual storytelling is on another level here. Also, Lee Byung-hun is phenomenal as the lead. He understands the tone of this film so well, and I can't imagine a more perfect performance here. And the ending, it is so fitting and again, actually perfect for this story. No Other Choice had me laughing one moment and wanting to yell at the screen the next. It's that kind of movie. And when it comes to balancing crime, drama, satire, and comedy, I just don't think anyone could have done it better than Park Chan-wook. Now, I feel like some people are going to give me a hard time about placing this next movie this low on my list, because this seems to be a lot of people's favorite movie, but it's not low. I loved it. It's a great film and it absolutely holds up on a rewatch. Opening my top 5 is One Battle After Another. I had such a blast both times I watched it. I feel like this movie needs no introduction at this point, but the basic premise is that it's about a washed up former revolutionary, Bob, whose old nemesis comes back after many years with very concerning intentions. So Bob has to do everything he can to find his daughter, and his daughter must do everything she can to survive. There are a few examples of organized chaos on this list, and One Battle After Another is one of them. As I mentioned in my review, this is kind of a crazy crowd pleaser because of this insane energy it has combined with the electrifying filmmaking, but it's also really funny and entertaining. It's impossible to look away from. Every second of it is gripping. Paul Thomas Anderson is definitely getting his flowers for this from many awards bodies, and he absolutely deserves it. Again, we have a blend of genres working in perfect harmony. It's action-packed, it's satirical, it's dramatic, it's political without being preachy or overbearing. It's great to see a movie be this entertaining and this funny while also having something important to say. It just works on every level. The visual storytelling, the pacing, the dialogue, the charismatic cast, the score, all of this comes together to make 2 hours, 41 minutes fly by, which is so rare. Speaking of the cast, I still stand by my opinion that this is my favorite Leo performance. Bob has the same energy as his character in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, except Bob is an even bigger mess. I guess I just like seeing DiCaprio be a hot mess. He's very good at it, and he's very entertaining to watch because he has great comedic timing. One Battle After Another is a very memorable film, particularly because of how memorable and distinct these characters are, who then get into these insane high-stakes situations that Paul Thomas Anderson handles perfectly. It's great. What else is there to say? To keep this organized chaos energy going, at number 4, I have Marty Supreme. And I have to be honest, I actually kept swapping Marty Supreme and One Battle After Another as far as the placement on my list goes. So in my mind, they're pretty much on the same level, but there is something about the specific brand of insanity when it comes to Marty Supreme that makes me want to place it just a little bit higher. This is technically a sports drama or a sports dramedy because it is really funny, but with the energy of Uncut Gems. It's about a very determined fictional American table tennis player, Marty Mauser, who is loosely based on Marty Reisman, who will pretty much stop at nothing to become world champion. This is a crazy movie, and I mean it as a compliment. I was locked in and loving every second of it. I've seen a lot of people say that they left this movie buzzing with energy, and this really is how this movie feels. The energy it has is infectious and impossible to resist. I feel like I just said the word energy like 10 times describing this movie already. I love a chaotic movie when it's purposeful, and Josh Safdie knows exactly what he's doing with Marty Supreme. There isn't a single line of dialogue here that's out of place or shot without a specific intention. Not a single second is wasted. And again, just like with One Battle After Another, we're talking about a 2.5-hour film that flies by so fast because of how well-paced and well-edited it is. What's also interesting is that the movie is set in the 50s, but the soundtrack and the filmmaking style make it feel very 80s, which I don't think is something I've encountered before. But I really liked that approach of almost double dipping into 2 different past decades. And of course, the cast. The cast is fantastic. Timothée Chalamet in particular really blew me away with the level of charisma I can't say I've seen from him before. This was one of those movies where I sat down in the theater ready to take notes, and I just couldn't. I barely wrote anything down because of how engaged I was, how into this film I was. I was completely consumed by it. And I don't even like ping pong, but Marty Supreme was that pure, electric, exhilarating cinema that I just cannot get enough of. Now, before I get into my top 3, I wanted to talk about some honorable mentions. I don't usually do honorable mentions, but I wanted to try something new, and I had a handful of movies that didn't really fit neatly into any other kind of list So I'm going to talk about them right now because I want to mention them. First up are two more movies that I had an amazing time at the cinema with, and they are F1 and Weapons. Look, I get why people say F1 is cheesy, but sometimes a cheesy movie hits just right, and Joseph Kosinski knows how to make a great summer blockbuster. It has a charismatic cast, amazing racing sequences, a good amount of heart and charm. It knows what movie it is, and it delivers. Made me forget about the world for 2.5 hours, which is a big win. Weapons, on the other hand, is the most fun you could have with mainstream horror this year. It was an unforgettable theatrical experience because of the effect it had on a packed theater. And as a fan of Barbarian, I loved seeing Zach Cregger dial up every element of that. Such an exciting and refreshing horror film that's well made, entertaining, genuinely creepy even when it gets goofy, and very original. Another horror film that I really wanted to include in my top 10, it's sitting right outside of it, and that's Danny Boyle's 28 Years Later. A bit of a divisive one, but I thought it was great. I love the way Danny Boyle approaches his films, and he is having a lot of fun here. You can tell it's his movie. I loved the performances and the characters. I loved the way it expanded the world and evolved the virus. I loved the coming of age story and the more emotional aspects. Yes, it is essentially 3 movies in one, and it leaves you with questions because it's a first film in a trilogy. But the more I sit with it, the more I appreciate this structure. Speaking of emotional journeys, that's what my next 2 honorable mentions are: Sentimental Value and Eternity. Joachim Trier's Sentimental Value is a story of a family with some very complicated dynamics. And it's a very easy movie to love. It's a very sweet and comforting story about connection and authenticity, but also about accepting that not everything or everyone is meant to be fixed. Pain is just something you live with, and it doesn't make you unlovable or a lesser person. And somehow, that's a comforting thought. Eternity, on the other hand, is a meditation on happiness and love wrapped in a rom-com shell. It's about a woman in the afterlife deciding if she wants to spend eternity with the man she spent her life with or her first true love who died young. In a way, it has some things in common with Past Lives, which was unexpected, but it's also a very charming, hopeful film that's easy to recommend. Finally, what I think is the most underrated and most misunderstood movie of the year, A House of Dynamite. I could talk about this film for a surprisingly long time because I find a lot of the reactions to it surprising, but I think Kathryn Bigelow said exactly what she wanted to say here and did exactly what she wanted to do, and she did it very well. The film is a warning against nuclear escalation and an even bigger warning about how unprepared we are for something like this. It's about how fast everything can change and how a small group of people decides the fate of millions. It's about how false the promise of nuclear deterrence is and how unfortunately relevant this is right now. The cast is excellent, and there are some really impactful, powerful moments here. Bigelow once again showing that she is a master of tension. And the ending, which a lot of people seem to have an issue with, is exactly what it needs to be. So here we are at the top 3, and I feel very confident about it. Opening this top 3 is a film a lot more people need to see, and a story that took me by surprise at every turn. It was just an accident. Jafar Panahi is a genius. I've been slowly going through his filmography, but this film left me speechless. Vahid is an auto mechanic who was once imprisoned and interrogated by Iranian authorities. One day, a man with a prosthetic leg enters his workshop and Vahid thinks he recognizes him as one of his former torturers based on the sound of his creaking leg. He wants revenge, but first, he wants to be sure. This is the type of film that really sticks with you. It lingers. I'm sure we have all seen at least one film like that really left an impression, so much so that you will randomly think about it throughout the day because something reminded you of it. This is what It Was Just an Accident was like for me. The thing is, I actually don't know what I expected from this film, but I've heard a lot of praise and my expectations were very high, yet somehow it exceeded all of them. Panahi's approach to this story is so playful, but it never feels safe. And I mean safe in the filmmaking sense, but also safe for the characters. It's a balance between humor, intensity, and drama in a film that examines the moral right to revenge. It's a film about corruption and justice, a film that takes a simple premise and really turns it into a story that examines right and wrong and how that desire for revenge clashes with being a good person. Great ensemble cast, so many powerful moments, and an unforgettable ending. I mean, really. What an ending. Those two final scenes are burned into my memory forever now. I often talk about how so many movies these days don't actually explore the ideas they bring up. What they do is put them out there and that's that, but that's not enough. Anybody can do that. What makes a movie great is what the filmmakers do with these ideas and themes, and It Was Just an Accident thoroughly explores everything it brings to the table. It takes that central concept and truly makes something very special out of it. It's a masterclass in writing and filmmaking. It is simply brilliant. Now, for the longest time, this next film was my favorite movie of the year. I was really beginning to think nothing was going to dethrone it. And even now, my number one and number two are pretty close. Obviously, I still think it's fantastic, and I'm talking about Sinners. It was amazing in a packed theater, it was amazing on a rewatch at home, and it is easily one of the best films of this decade. What do I even say about Sinners that hasn't been said already? And not just by other people, but also by me, because this is the third time I'm talking about it on my channel. It's a horror film, it's a vampire film, it's a party film, it's a bit of a musical, and it is exhilarating. Twin brothers are trying to leave their troubled lives behind, return to their hometown, and discover an even greater evil coming to join their party. One of those movies where I feel sad for people who didn't get to experience this on the big screen. I had a few of those unforgettable cinema experiences in 2025, but this one beats all of them in terms of seeing it in a full theater, feeling the energy of the people in the room, and the music and the cinematography have a lot to do with that. Every nomination Sinners got is 100% deserved, and I couldn't be happier that this is the movie that set the new record for most nominations ever received. I'd give it even more. Jack O'Connell and Miles Caton, I see you, and you fucking killed it as well. The number of times I've rewatched clips of I Lied to You, that barn burner that made me feel like I'm levitating in the theater, and Rocky Road to Dublin because Irish dancing vampires, are you kidding me? The number of times I rewatched those is getting a little embarrassing. But I love it. I love everything about this film, the characters, the cultural elements, the music, the action, the tone, the sexiness, the meaning behind it all. Sinners is capital C cinema. I was a little worried it wouldn't hold up as well on a rewatch on TV, but it does. It is powerful, it is memorable, it is unique, it is stunning. I could keep going, but I'm going to stop. It's a movie that sweeps you off your feet, and I cannot imagine not having fun with it. But at number 1, a movie that completely floored and annihilated me on my first and on my second viewing, and for some reason, I would still watch it again. And that's Hamnet. I honestly find it difficult to talk about this film because I love it so much and it makes me feel so many things that it's kind of hard for me to put it into words. Hamnet is based on a historical fiction novel by Maggie O'Farrell, who co-wrote the script here with the director Chloe Zhao. It imagines Shakespeare's life as a family man, how life and loss affected his work, and particularly how it inspired the creation of one of his masterpiece plays, Hamlet. Guys, this film destroyed me and inspired me in so many ways, and you might be wondering why I would put a movie like this above Sinners, which is clearly a great time. I mean, which one of them is more rewatchable from an entertainment perspective? Obviously Sinners. But the way I connected with Hamnet, what this movie did for me emotionally, how I felt it on some kind of spiritual level, it is uncomparable to anything else I've seen this year. I could talk about the obvious things that make this film great. Jessie Buckley and Paul Mescal are fantastic. Buckley in particular is at her best, and she is sweeping the awards 1000% fairly. The chemistry between the two of them is insane. The movie itself is gorgeous. The score is beautiful. Stop ruining my life, Max Richter. The emotions here are soul-shattering because the happiness you see is just as powerful as the pain. Plus, I am a big fan of Shakespeare and all things Shakespeare. But there's so much more to this film that you feel as you're watching it. The way Chloe Zhao captures nature and humanity through visual storytelling. The way we understand these characters completely just from a certain look or a certain shot. It's the way it portrays how precious life and happiness is, how differently we grieve, and how healing art can be. This film is everything, and somehow, I don't know how that's possible, but it hit me even harder the second time I watched it. It's an 11 out of 10 kind of film for me, and here's what I'm going to leave you with. I am not someone who uses the M word, lightly, but here there's no question about it for me because Hamnet is a masterpiece. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I cannot wait to see your favorites in the comments below, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Bye.